In this video, we will show you how to replace your steering drag link on this Dodge Ram. This is part of your front steering and suspension located under the front of your vehicle. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's safely make our way under the vehicle. You're going to locate your drag link. As you make your way over towards the driver's side outer tie rod end, you're going to find the mounting sleeve. At the sleeve here, we want to confirm that this does actually move and we don't have to replace it as part of this job. To loosen this, you're going to find that you have two 15mm headed mounting bolts. We'll loosen those so the sleeve clamps are loose on the sleeve itself. Now once we've done that, we'll continue on with some penetrant directly inside of this port on the sleeve. Now continuing from here, there's typically a sleeve tool that will have a small hook and you can grab into this area and gently start pulling it one direction or the other. You could also carefully use a pry bar directly inside this slot, gently turning it, and then of course you could also use some long pliers to take hold of it and twist it as needed. Going to work in that lubricant here. Now we'll pause in the approximate location that it was at and we'll continue on by making a measurement. When we do separate these two ends from each other with this sleeve, we want to make sure when we reinstall everything, it'll be at approximately the same adjustment. This is for alignment purposes. We'll make our way from one side stud all the way over here on the passenger side to that driver's side tie rod stud. I can see my measurement and I'll take note. After making that measurement, we're going to make the measurement for our steering stabilizer shock mounting bracket. This has to be mounted in approximately the same position when we go to reinstall it on the new drag link. For this, I'm going to use my measuring tape, make my way from the stud, and we'll make our way all the way over to the bracket. Now your measurement may vary. Mine's at approximately 22.5 inches. I'll take note of that and move along. Now focusing on the adjustment sleeve itself, try to take a peek inside the slot. Looking inside this area, you should be able to see the threaded portion of each one of the two tie rod ends. We have the outer tie rod end and what would be considered the inner tie rod end or drag link here. What we're looking for is the threaded portions. When you do go to remove your part, you want to make sure that you have this timed properly. But generally, as long as you have it so each one of the threaded portions are pretty much the same distance in, you do not need to fully remove the entire thing. Typically, you can just loosen this and remove the unit itself. Assuming that does look like it's pretty much even, we're going to continue on by tightening this mounting hardware that's closest to the outer tie rod end. We'll use our 15mm for this. Now moving away from that sleeve, we're going to move approximately halfway down the drag link. You're going to find the bracket for your front steering stabilizer shock. We've already taken a measurement, so we know exactly where it needs to sit on the brand new drag link, so we can continue on to removing the hardware, holding it in place, and we'll gently rest this down and out of our way. To loosen each of these mounting nuts, we'll be using a 13mm. We can remove those, a close inspection, replace as necessary. As for the bracket itself, you want to make sure you clean and inspect this as well. Just go ahead and flip it so we can have a look up along the top here. Use a wire brush. Make sure it's not rotted and weak. If it is, you want to go ahead and replace it. That looks good. Let's move along. Moving all the way towards the passenger side of that drag link, we have another ball and socket area here. Let's go ahead and remove the cotter pin and the mounting nut. We'll start it back on a couple threads. have to break that one off. Use our 21 millimeter for this mounting nut. There's our castle nut. Now we'll use some penetrant in this area. To separate this area, you could use several different tools. You could use a tie rod end removal tool, you could use a pickle fork up and in between the joint area, or even just use a hammer, causing some vibration separating this. Whatever you do, you definitely want to have the nut on there a couple threads for safety. Carefully take hold of the drag link. We're going to separate it from this area. It can be heavy. You want to be careful when this comes swinging down. Now let's follow it all the way down to the sleeve, close to the outer tie rod end. Looking down here, when we go to unscrew the drag link from the tie rod end sleeve, we want to count the amount of turns. Typically, it's also a good habit to go ahead and mark on the threaded portion very close to that sleeve itself, essentially as a secondary marking. You can use pretty much anything for this. Now I'm just going to make a secondary marking right here so we can count the amount of turns it takes to remove the drag link from that sleeve. We'll be using some long nose pliers to hold onto the drag link itself, turning it in one direction or the other, breaking it free from this area. Once it has broken free, we can continue on unscrewing it, like I said, counting those threads. So we worked in that penetrant now. Let's continue on unscrewing this. We'll be turning this what would be clockwise here. There's 1, 2, and so on. There we are. I had approximately 38 turns on that. Your results may vary. There it is, friends. Go ahead and set that aside for recycling. Now that we have that removed from the sleeve, we're going to give the sleeve itself a close inspection, confirming the inside where the threaded area is not rotted or damaged. If it is, you want to go ahead and replace the sleeve as well. Use some parts cleaner for this first. A quick inspection. Once that is inspected, we'll continue on with some anti-seize. Let's make our way over towards the passenger side. On that outer tie rod end, you're going to find the mounting point for our drag link. We want to make sure we clean and inspect inside of the port, along the outboard side here, and along the back side, making sure that everything's in good condition. Okay, friend, let's prepare to install our brand new drag link. We'll align this with the sleeve, which is attached to the left front outer tie rod end. Once you have it aligned, start turning it counterclockwise to start screwing it in. When bringing this in, we want to turn it the exact same amount of turns as it took to remove the original drag link. This can take a couple tries. There we are. Now I'm just going to put a marking on this so we can keep count. So we'll start with 1 because I already have it in there, thread, 2, 3, and so on. There we are. I have it in the approximate amount of turns. Now we'll just make our way all the way over towards the passenger side and we'll get this in place. This comes through from the inboard side towards the outboard side here. Start on the castle nut. We'll snug this up and torque it to 60 foot-pounds. Continuing from there, we need to pay attention to the slots that are on the mounting nut in comparison to the port that goes through the center of the mounting stud here. We want to make sure we have it aligned so we can install our cotter pin. If it's not properly aligned and you can't put in your cotter pin, continue tightening this nut until the very next slot does align and you can install the cotter pin. Let's install that locking cotter pin. Now we'll pin this over so there's no way this nut can loosen up on us while we're driving down the road. Make your way all the way back down to the sleeve. Now down here, we're going to continue on to tightening the clamp for our sleeve. Once we have it snug, we're going to torque each piece of mounting hardware to 40 foot-pounds. A quick note when tightening the sleeve, make sure you have it so the opening of the clamp is opposite to the slot on the sleeve itself. Now we'll torque each of these to 40 foot-pounds. On the drag link, we need to reattach the bracket that holds the stabilizer shock in place. As you remember, we took a measurement so we know exactly where the bracket will go, so we'll just go ahead and make a quick marking. On my application, it was approximately 22.5 inches, so that's where I'll make my marking on my bar. This is just for my reference here. Let's take hold of that bracket. We'll bring it up. You want to have this aligned, as I mentioned. You can push it to one side or the other as necessary. Once you do have it aligned, we'll continue on with those U-shaped clamps. Those just go over the bar and then straight through this bracket. Once you have it through there, go ahead and start on each of the two mounting nuts for each one of these. Once you have all four of the mounting nuts started on there, we need to pay attention to a couple things. First of all, we want to try to have the bracket pretty much level with the ground if possible. We want to make sure the bracket's still aligned with our mounting point there, of course, and then when we go to tighten each one of these four nuts, we're going to do one clamp at a time, and when you do them, you essentially want to make sure they're even. You don't want to tighten this one until it's completely bottomed out, and then it's off kilter. That's going to cause an issue. We'll just go ahead and carefully bottom out one, bottom out the other, make sure we're properly aligned here, and repeat the process for the other one. Looking at this, I can see there's a lot more thread on the rearward mounting hardware here, so I'm just going to loosen this one. We'll snug this one. Once they're both bottomed out and look as though they're pretty much equal, we'll move along. That looks great. Just going to make our way back and forth on these. One. After confirming that you've torqued everything to manufacturer's specifications, make your way out from under the vehicle, take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.